This is the Ministry of Time. What? Yes, I've got it. Shush.
No, my chest.
We are normal, situation under control. Thank you for asking. We had a slight recording equipment malfunction, but everything is perfectly alright now. We're all fine here. We're fine. Thank you. How are you?
(2417). The Pharyngians offered to make the independent Blatt state their vassal, and the Blatt agreed, having barely read the paperwork. Fara Way had no choice but to confront the Pharyngians on what looked to be their almost immediately overturning of their earlier promise not to do just this. That they tried to weasel their way out of their obligations on technicalities was bad enough. Even without the 45% tax imposed on the Blatt. But what was most annoying was Fara Way civil servants having to cross out independent on their shiny new maps, which they hoped would have remained current for longer than just a month. As a compromise, Fara Way and the new Pharyngian state founded the Democratic Friends of Freedom, a new galactic organisation to safeguard the free friends of the free in the galaxy. The key word, in case you missed it, was freedom. Freedom! For the second time in Fara Wayan history, one of its luminaries became an immortal superbeing. Yi He embraced the power of the Composer of Strands. Their flesh changed under the hand of the great mysteries of the Shroud, to become the immortal champion. This is perfectly normal and should not be a concern to anyone. A proposal in the Fara Way Senate to construct a colossal mining platform was passed in 2419, with an overwhelming 92% of the vote. When it was later pointed out that the platform was a super capital ship, and the supposed mining tool in fact a massive primary weapon capable of cracking planets apart and wiping them clean of life, several senators admitted that maybe they hadn't quite read the entire document, perhaps having skimmed some of the technical details, but remained confident that it would be a great benefit to the colony's mineral economy. The Accords declared war on a fallen empire in 2424. The Bohovnadan Protectors having scrambled their fleets, the Accords dragged the communal state of Rock into the war against their will. The Blom, on the other hand, were more than willing to enter the war on the promise of not having to do anything. It was all for show anyway, as the Accords only wanted to beat those damn cats to the punch, who had already gathered their fleets on the Bohovnadan Protectors' borders. The Accords and the cats invaded the Bohovnadan Protectors' space, both with contradictory goals of freeing the people there and making a democratic republic, and on the other hand to eradicate the threat to the Earth. But in their haste to beat each other to the glory of defeating this fallen empire, both sides kind of forgot what kind of threat a fallen empire could pose, and several hundred ships in the Sigma Draconis system were flattened. Literally flattened. And not literally in the figurative sense, they were flattened. Two-dimensional. What aren't you getting about this? Maybe the core concept? An advanced weapon, later identified as a reality perforator, had reformatted the local space around the fleet from 3 dimensions to 2, annihilating millions of naval crew in the blink of an eye. An Accords representative quipped, "The Accords were right!" Whereas the rest of the galaxy became very, very afraid. Learn to read the room, dumb Accords rep. Only having learnt of the reality perforator through this act of savage destruction, psychics scrying on the Accords determined that they had succeeded in salvaging just such a weapon. It remained unknown whether or not they were capable of using the device. Given that it was slightly more complicated than a toaster, they probably didn't have a clue. A year after the Battle of Sigma Draconis in 2425, the Democratic Roidarians Republic of Roid's Minister of Defense reported to the head of state that their report into the battle was finally ready. the reality perforator that the Behovnadon protectors activated had claimed the lives of over 20 million cats. No non-Behovdion that entered the system that day lived to tell the tale. The head of state muttered that they should not write that in their history books. The Minister of Defense suggested instead to tell the public that their brave soldiers simply went to another galaxy. Unfortunately, the head of state forgot that it was not the state that wrote the history books, but historians, who saw right through the terrible propaganda that no cat with more than 2 brain cells would fall for. And they went ahead to write the entire event into the history books, and teach it to their undergraduate classes. Despite intense political pressure to back down from the war, the Accords refused to suffer national humiliation and voted to continue the fight against the fallen empire. Their fateful decision left the Gnogian Republic and the Blom to suffer reprisals from reality-altering ships. If you'll indulge a quick aside, who in the Accords precisely stood to be humiliated? Having kept aliens secret from the people of Earth, only the military arm of the Accords would even know that they had fought a war over distant stars in the first place. This suggested that only personal pride would be wounded, which of course could only be healed by continuing to throw souls into the meat grinder. Blood for the blood god. Layla Al-Thani was voted into the presidency of the colonies of Fara Way in 2427. Despite some cries of corruption and vote manipulation from the most zealous cultists devoted to Bao Wan, Al-Thani ran on a platform for the continued push to improve the lives of all people in the galaxy and curb the influence of the Accords, a faction that she believed represented the worst characteristics of all sapient creatures. Her first act in office was to publicly denounce the Accords in the Galactic Senate for their refusal to end the war with the Behovnadon. After a protracted campaign against the Accords, the Protectors once again utilised their weapon of mass flattening, turning more fleets two-dimensional. It was a last-ditch act by the Protectors to stop the Accords, who had been close to invading one of their core planets. The Behovnadon Protectors accepted a white peace 2 days later, and because the affected fleets had held only ground troops, basically army grunts, all was forgiven, even though there had been tens of thousands of them. They could always recruit more. The Fallen Empire then conceded control of the Sigma Dracona system to the Accords, which was seen as such a significant victory that they were able to leverage it to shelve the proposed denouncement of the Accords in the Galactic Senate. The move was a display of shocking disregard for interstellar law and community, but at least showed that everything was quickly getting back to normal. The Accords ignored the maxim, "Don't shoot the messenger," in 2430 when they did just that, executing envoys who had the temerity of delivering a strongly worded letter listing Accords violations of galactic law. Accords council members were apparently cackling maniacally when they made the decision, as was reported by several witnesses, who all went suddenly quiet for some reason, and then were no longer available to answer further enquiries. When the Blom became a vassal of the Democratic Roydarians Republic of Royd, and the DRRR subsequently released the Gnogians, Fara Way dutifully updated their maps again in 2431, a decent number of years having elapsed since the last change. The peace did not last. Just to be dicks about it, the Accords made the newly freed Gnogian Republic a vassal mere days later, drawing further outcry from the galactic community for making the borders and names change once again. And something to do with the Great and Bloody War of Galactic Liberation still in recent memory. But mostly the maps. Paper doesn't grow on Pharyngians, you know. Widespread unrest in Blom space in 2432. As gas factories and hotboxes began running out of power and materials. Attributed to the muddled Blom, again, why say muddled, just Blom would do, entering into a vassalship under the DRRR with unfavourable terms in the previous year. Both the Blom and the Cats broke off the agreement to then form another one under Fara Way advisement. But as neither cats nor mushrooms can read, it probably didn't solve anything in the long term. The Accords were once again denounced by the galactic community in 2433. They did not care. no one on Earth cared either. To be fair, the humans of Earth were still being shielded from the true nature of the universe by an authoritarian secret council about the presence of really hecking weird psychic trees, idiot mushrooms getting high on their own farts, cats that talked entirely in cat puns, and, you know, maybe the authoritarian secret council had the right idea. Still getting to grips with the idea of galactic politics, by that time only having had centuries to work out the basics, it emerged that the Pharyngians had for the past decade assigned every single one of their envoys to the new Democratic Friends of Freedom Federation. The gaffe was discovered when, in an enthusiastic show of solidarity, all 10 of the Pharyngian officials who were empowered to conduct interstellar politics showed up to the same Federation office. Realizing that this vastly reduced their diplomatic muscle on the galactic stage, someone quietly told them that they only really needed a single official representative. But it will probably happen again. Fara Way's Deep Core Miner 9000 was fully commissioned in 2434. The massive build of the megastructure had been finally completed thanks, in no small part, to the Bow organization, who had swept up quite a few of the contracts. All that was left to do was to find a small unwanted planet that no one would miss in order to test it out. Perhaps Mars? In a terrible administration blunder, however, the Deep Core Miner 9000 was discovered to have been accidentally equipped with the ability only to mine organic materials, and not planetary minerals, which obviously had been the original intention. Obviously. The communal state of rock seemed to be blissfully unaware of the ramifications of the proposed targeting change. The Bow organization declined to comment. Earth was restored to its former glory in 2436. No longer a tomb world, the efforts of the Accords was reflected in the seas and the oceans of the beautiful continental world. Sure, the seas were in the wrong place, but the miasmic pollution was gone, and everyone was very happy that they could go outside again, particularly since the Triffid infestation had been defeated. Well, probably let's just say that no one had seen one for ages. Despite accusations of election rigging, the outcome of the 2438 Fara Way so-called democratic election was set in stone. To no one's surprise, the incumbent President Layla was elected for a second term. Her first act was to research penal colonies. Quite interesting given her rumoured history. Are penal colonies like ant colonies but with... never mind. All people, regardless of species, were then given full citizenship and utopian abundance in their living standards whilst living within faraway space. 2439. The Blom began construction of a gigantic space megastructure devoted to the sciences. This caused quite the commotion among state officials and analysts the galaxy over, given the Blom's reluctance just to press a button occasionally or understand what it did. Could it be that if the Blom stopped huffing exotic gases, they could be competent? Maybe even a force in the galaxy? No. Spy networks and travelling dignitaries were all relieved to report back to their states that most of the engineers and employees of the new science nexus were not of Blom descent. After 5 full years of arguments about allegedly planning the existential expulsion of the rest of the galaxy, and having stopped the Democratic Roydarians Republic of Royd from becoming custodian, the Accords finally declared war on the DRRR in 2445. Anything for a quiet life, really. The aim of the war was to conquer land, put the cats in their place, and to liberate the Blom, who had somehow sworn secret fealty to the Accords. Goodness knows how. Do they understand any of the buttons they press, or do they just do it to stop them blinking? Either way, the Fara Way Colonies then intervened, and they rapidly brokered a peace deal, much to the irritation of the Accords. The DRRR surrendered immediately, leaving the Blom to move to yet another overlord. Fara Way psychics and spies identified in 2449 possible plans that the Accords could build an etherophasic engine, a theoretically cataclysmic weapon that would collapse all stars in the galaxy into black holes. It certainly sounded like something they would do. Ministry note for the archive. This weapon has appeared in other timelines that threaten to collapse into utter anarchy, totalitarianism, or anarchy. See Codronite file from the Commonwealth timeline for more details. Amidst the looming crisis of the Accord's Ethrophasic engine plans, the Pharyngians demanded the Cats join the Federation in order to solidify relations before the Pharyngians would vote to make them custodians. The Cats countered that if the DRRR joined the Federation, they would overwhelmingly threaten the Accords and could therefore not serve as a quasi-neutral arbiter. Fara Way resigned from the Federation in protest of the Pharyngians' manipulations. This left the galaxy's largest power block in tatters, even as the darkness of the suspected Accord's doomsday weapon threatened all life. In 2452, the Fara Way Colonies gave a sales demo of their new deep core mining machine. I thought it was a small moon at first, but as I approached in my spacecraft, I saw there was actually a deep core mining machine. As a delegate of the communal state of rock, I was extremely impressed by Fara Way's new mining capabilities. Many of our allies were invited to watch the demonstration in the Alderaan system, and we all had a sense of amazement after seeing the successful demonstration of the machine. This will allow us to extract so many minerals. Top CSR officials have already begun bidding on the machine. 2455. Claiming the Council was a relic of more authoritarian times, and that the pursuit of council seats and custodianship led to corruption and backstabbing, the communal state of rock and the reformed Galactic Republic led the legislation to remove the Galactic Council. During the negotiations, the GR revealed that they had reformed back to their authoritarian ways, fully rejecting the liberal values imposed on them by the Fara Way Colonies. Democracy having failed, the Cats rebranded again. Once again, the leader of the new and improved Galactic Republic. Somehow, Mulius Caesar returned. The Galactic Republic, fiercely independent, coveting power and control with all forms of international diplomacy breaking down, and boasting the largest military in the galaxy. What would they do next?
This thing is still on? Crap, we have, what do you want me to say? Really? That sounds totally fake. Fine. Timeline reactor leak here. I repeat, a timeline reactor leak. Give us a few decades to lock it down. Large leak. Very dangerous.